So, you know, we're already live. It's fine. Just like, let's make sure we tell everybody that when they get on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to. I'm gonna hide video. Or if you want, actually, I'm gonna hide video, but I'll put the screen up that says it's like the event banner. Does that make sense?
Started on a rare evening broadcast, putting out information on reopening the state again by May 1st. The golf courses and elective surgery came after that, but the Wednesday prior, he had with the Secretary of Health had announced some reopening to resume May 1st if there's enough testing available for certain areas, especially for high risk areas and sectors, and then data. The data is essentially 50 new cases per 100,000 of the population in the previous 14 days. And he teamed with Carnegie Mellon, among some other universities, to do the reopening. So, and it would be by phases and regions. So the next slide on current phase. So we're all still in the current phase, which is red. Nothing's really changed. Licensing businesses only, stay-at-home orders in place, large gatherings prohibited, restaurants and bars limited carry-out deliveries, and travel only for life-sustaining purposes. So the goal is to get to the next slide for the yellow and green phases. So yellow is telework must continue where feasible. Businesses with in-person operations must follow business and building safety orders. Childcare, I know it's been a concern for some folks who have to go back to work but don't have childcare options. But they can reopen with worker and building safety orders. And stay-at-home restrictions are lifted in favor of aggressive mitigation. And the large gatherings are now limited to 25 or more. In-person retail is allowable, but curbside and delivery is encouraged. And indoor recreation, health and wellness facilities remain closed. So your spas, gyms, et cetera, casinos remain closed. And then restaurants and bars are still limited carry out and delivery only. And the goal is to get to green phase. All businesses and individuals, customers must follow CDC and DOH guidelines. Mitigation orders lifted, and they'll monitor public health indicators, which is probably that data, to adjust orders and restrictions as necessary. And this phase will facilitate a return to a new normal, in quotes from the governor's website. So the next slide. So the regions, talk about the regions. So Northwest, North Central, Northeast, Southwest, South Central, and of course the Southeast, which is the next one. So the Southeast region is of course, Delaware County, and then the typical other 4 counties, Philadelphia, Chester, Bucks, and Montgomery counties. They also put in Berks, which is not always, they often do that in the Southeast for Berks, but Schuylkill and Lancaster County were also listed. So there's been some pushback on this. There's been some pushback on this for Schuylkill and Lancaster County because they are so rural. So the governor in the press conference, I think it was Monday, indicated that they might not follow these regions exactly. They might break it up a little bit more based on some of that data I mentioned. So the next slide. So factors and recommendations. So the factors will be considered on an ongoing basis. Employers will be responsible for developing and demonstrating compliance, but at any point the governor, in consultation with the Department of Health and PEMA, may revise reopening standards to adjust for the spread of the disease. And for recommendations, again, it's a moving target, but as of this morning, not a whole lot of recommendations, but the state will put forth guidance and recommendations for employers and individuals and healthcare facilities for assured accountability as we reopen. So the next one is guidance and rules. So as mentioned, the state will provide guidance for business individuals that will enable employers to use their own expertise to decide what is best for their businesses while reporting on outcomes back to the state. Guidance will reemphasize and build upon existing orders to protect employees and customers, and organizations will be required to make employees and customers aware of the guidance provided by the Commonwealth to keep people at their establishment safe, which goes into the next slide. So it looks like what's going to happen is the state's going to, just like the OSHA guidelines that a lot of companies have to post, they're going to have a flyer, COVID-19 safety procedures for businesses for not only employees, but for publicly posted for the consumer, for the customers as well. There's also a requirement to name a pandemic safety officer who will be in charge of carrying out the COVID-19 safety procedures set forth in this guidance. And then again, more guidance is coming, so we're paying attention. So Tricia, I don't know if you want me to go into the next slide, some other items of interest, or stop there for some questions.
Well, I do think we should just keep going, but this is a perfect opportunity to remind everyone, and I think I broke up a little bit in the introduction. If anybody has any questions for Alex and then Mike, if you can type them in the chat portion of the webinar. I did just put those instructions, so if you could type your questions in there, and then we will ask the questions during the Q&A period. So at this point, we'll have Alex continue, but if anybody has any questions, type them in there, and then we'll answer the questions in a few minutes. Thanks, Alex.
So other items of interest. So the county, of course, the county's been working hard, and of course, a bunch of different levels, from human services to individuals, but of course, the Chamber's tracking business items. So they have a 1.7 million Delco Strong grant that came out for small business support grants. And I put the link there, and I think the Chamber has it on their website as well. And then for this, well, let me come back to state. Let me cover federal for a minute. So on the federal side, SBA released the next round of PPP, and the links there for the next round of that funding for businesses. In addition, there's talk about another relief package. It's actually the fifth one. There's been 4 previous relief bills, but for the PPE, it would be the 4th bill. There are some issues with that going back and forth, and it's just jockeying that we've seen between the House, Senate, and of course the President. Some more funding for healthcare, food assistance, but also food assistance, excuse me, also state and local governments. The National Government Association, which is bipartisan, is asking for anywhere between $300 billion to $1 trillion help for state governments, which I'll come back to because it does impact our state. And there's also some negotiations over infrastructure, which is important to SEPTA, who's an active member of the Chamber, but also all the folks, the business owners, as well as employees that utilize that for the Delaware County economy. So stay tuned on that. The House was going to return Monday, May 4th, but as indicated, they are not. The Senate, U.S. Senate, is still returning. On a more local note, Senator Toomey also put out some information on the CARES Act and how that money is flowing to hospitals in particular. And that link I can provide if you don't already have. And then the senator had also introduced a plan to opening up America for Pennsylvania. Some things are a little bit different than the governor's opening, but it's actually changed since the senator released that in the governor's latest actions. And then Senator Casey also has some information out there for food distributors to apply for federal aid. And I should have mentioned that under the Trump administration, the president yesterday, I think it was, yesterday, announced under the Defense Production Act he would compel meat processing plants to stay open as they are critical infrastructure. I don't think we have any meat processing members, Trish, but it does impact folks further down the chain, especially our restaurants and other food providers. So that's the federal. A couple of things on the state I want to get back to. So if you have a state business loan that is currently deferred, the governor did announce that recently, as well as there's unemployment compensation. One of the things that's new under that, and the chambers cover this really well, just want to mention it, but individual proprietors and some other folks are eligible for the first time that's happened. So if you need more information, again, it's on the chamber website or contact me or ask questions. And let me get into legislation. Oh, I didn't want to cover one thing. Funding is also available for charitable food systems. This kind of mimics what Senator Casey put out, but there's a new grant for, I know we have some human services nonprofits that are active in the chamber for charitable food systems. There's a grant that came out on yesterday, but the deadline's Friday. So again, if you need more information, let me know. So onto the PA legislature, I'll try and do this quick. A bunch of bills are being considered and have actually passed regarding the COVID response. Everything from trying to reopen certain industries before the governor allowed in response to some of his actions, and then also some things just to keep items moving. The one I just want to mention quickly that was passed and enacted by the governor is Senate Bill 841. It's now Act 15. It essentially allows some remote voting and some other things, but it also allows municipal and county governments to defer tax collection, which could be an issue for some of the local county, even school district budgets moving forward. There's a ton of other bills out there that literally as we're speaking here, that the legislature, the House and Senate are considering to reopen. And then a couple of things I mentioned that might be of importance is House Bill 1822. This one's a little worrisome, I think, for some of our membership, but it's an attempt to respond to some of the COVID funding. However, it potentially raises some economic development and environmental funds that some of our members are active in. I don't think it's going to go anywhere in the Senate, and if it does, I think the governor will veto it. But it's something to pay attention to because it'll play into the larger budget debate. House Bill 2400. This was to reopen the construction industry, but that is now a moot point because of the governor's order. I'm missing one here. I don't know what I covered. There's I don't know the number, I'm missing it, but the House yesterday passed a bill to allow real estate to move forward. And then as they were doing, the governor actually loosened up some real estate restrictions. So for any realtor members or folks in the call, just let me know, but it did go out pretty widely, what the governor did yesterday, as well as this bill I can't find. It's 2412. It passed 125 to 77 in the legislature. Now it goes to the Senate. I don't think the Senate's going to take it up today, but I could be wrong. With the real estate in mind, there's a Senate Bill 1097. There's actually a House companion that's moving as well to allow online notaries. But this also applies to other functions where you might need a notary for business transaction or personal to make it more remote and online. Two more things I just want to mention with the legislature. Senator Mike Reagan, along with Senator Killian here in Delaware County, have asked the administration to release the waivers they issued for during the process when we were still collecting waivers to reopen certain businesses. It hasn't gotten nasty yet, but there could be some potential back and forth with the legislature and the governor regarding this and potential subpoenas. So all this leads into budget, the state budget. It's going to be really interesting. This comes up a lot in our government affairs committee calls, our meetings now calls, what the budget looks like, because it impacts our membership usually in two ways, potential tax increase or cuts to some of our human services. This year, it could be both. There's a $5 to $6 billion projected deficit for the state budget moving forward, and how they fill that gap. Is it going to be some of this federal funding that I mentioned as this next relief package, if that's even passed? Is it going to be a tax increase, cuts, none of the above? There's talks about 6-month budget. There's talks about 2-year budgets. It's just a little bit hard to predict at this point. Mostly because it's hard to walk the halls and get information, but we're trying. So stay tuned for folks who really track the budget. This will be an important part of the conversation moving forward for the chamber. And we're always looking out for a couple different things. Again, cuts for some of our human services, but any sort of sales tax increase or expansion has them worrisome for a good chunk of the chamber membership. So with all that in mind, the next slide. So resources provided by the chamber. I referenced the website a couple times. Trish and her team has done a great job in making sure information is available for all of you. We also took an extra step by including a take action. We've kept this broad on purpose because we have such a diverse membership. So you can edit that message as you see fit. And if you put in your home or work address, it will go to your local legislator, but we also updated it for federal as well. So you can tailor that message. Again, we kept the suggestions broad on purpose to hit a couple different audiences and a couple different points, but important, important to let your legislators know how this is impacting you on your daily businesses, organizations, the people you employ, those you service, your consumers. There's so many things that they're trying to take up and respond to, but having some real life stories here in Delaware County, I think would really help, especially for our local delegation. And with that, I'm done. Any questions or comments, let me know.
All right, well, we don't see any questions in the chat yet, but we'll give people a little bit of time. And Alex, if you have some time to stay on the call while Mike speaks, then we may have some at the end. But now I want to move over to Mike Magnavita, who is the president and CEO of the Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union. And as most credit unions and banks have stayed open during this time, Mike's going to share what they've done and what they continue to do to keep their employees and their members safe during this time. We are thrilled to have Mike with us. We know he's very, very busy, but he's able to share some of the things that Franklin Mint's doing so your businesses can learn from what steps they have taken. So Mike, thank you. And we'll get you unmuted here. Jess, can you unmute Mike? I don't have that. I'm not able to do that.
I unmuted myself, I think.
Oh, good. Perfect. Thanks. Sorry, Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yep. You're all set. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to the Chamber and to Trish and her team, for hosting the webinar. I think this type of information to keep everybody informed is really great, and a great service provided by the Chamber. It's what they do, right? as a financial institution, we were required to stay open and serve our members. And so we pretty quickly had to figure out how to do that. And, with the primary goal of keeping our employees safe and our members safe when they were coming into contact with any of our employees. So it was interesting, back in December, our chief risk officer, he did a tabletop exercise for a crisis management. And the topic he selected was if there was a pandemic. And needless to say, we all kind of sat around the table early December, really busting his chops about, really, John, a pandemic? Are you serious? And here we are, ironically, we had gone through that exercise, and, like any kind of planning or preparation you can do for a crisis when it occurs, even though it may not be a pandemic and that's the exercise, any other type of natural disaster or whatever. We really did find that that meeting we had back then was really helpful in what we are doing today and how we were able to kind of mobilize quickly. There's a lot we have done leading up to this point, and we have had to pivot a few times and change course quickly. We try to be nimble. I think that's important as things change hour by hour some days, as you know. Just listening to Alex, all the changes that are occurring coming out of the governor's office, more so than the federal level, I think the guidance has been good, state and local governments. But as this is more about opening up, I'll try to focus on where we are today and things that we see going forward as a startup. So before we go to the next slide, I just want to also say we created a pandemic task force early on when we saw how things were moving, around the world, and we kind of saw it coming to our country. And initially, we were meeting daily. As things were rapidly changing, we reduced that to about 3 days a week. So every 8:30 every morning, we get on a Teams meeting call, and we have people from, there's about 10 people on that committee, which seems to be about the right size, representing the various areas of the credit union. And we're now down to about 2 days a week is what we need. We sort of fallen into this, I'll say, pandemic rhythm or cycle, where I want, a lot of the things we put in place initially, now things are running, and now we're kind of tweaking things, and we can catch our breath in between. So if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great, Jess. Thank you. So current operating environment, we have over 20 branch locations. And one of the things we did early on, we kind of had 3 phases, we thought, of how we would keep our branches operating. And we moved to phase 1 relatively quickly. And then again, within probably 48 hours, we went from phase 1, skipped over phase 2, and went right to phase 3. So that's the part about being nimble throughout a crisis like this that I think we have found to be helpful, useful, and we can execute that way. So what we decided, we had 4 out of our 20-some branch locations, 4 have drive-ups, and they're not located all real close to each other, so that was good. So in those branches, we left the 4 drive-ups open for transactions, and then we have 10 of our other branches where we are taking appointments in the lobby for member transactions. And when the member calls to make an appointment, we are requiring them to answer several questions like, have you tested positive? Are you symptomatic? Just go through the logical things you would ask, just to make sure someone's thinking about it. Like, hey, if you think you have been exposed or might have COVID-19, please do not come into one of our branches and put our employees or one of our other members at risk. So to date, knock on wood, we have not had any confirmed cases with any of our employees. And obviously people can get infected in other ways, not just, family members who work frontline providers and all of that. So we also strongly encourage members to use self-service and digital channels. We actually put an incentive in place quickly for someone to do remote deposit capture. That's where you can take a picture of a check or a money order with your phone or your iPad and have it deposited. We created a promotion. I think it was $25. If you've never done a remote deposit capture before, your first one, we would credit your account with $25. We actually saw a pretty large lift in volume for a couple of weeks. That has leveled off now, obviously, but people who were are using it. It's, you know, it's one less member waiting in a long line at one of our drive-ups. So that was useful. At our headquarters at our member service center, and just to put in perspective, we have about 400 employees. We have about 200 who work in our headquarter building, what we call back office, and we have 200 who staff all of our branch operations. We were able to, we had remote work infrastructure in place. We're not so much for our branch folks. They, you know, can't work, they cannot do their jobs remotely, but our back office folks, we had identified about 60 people we thought could work remotely. And we were sort of testing it like, well, you can work one day a week from home. And we went from that to having 220 employees because we added some of our branch folks. We had the infrastructure in place, the technology. So we were able to migrate 220 employees with full remote access. Our member service center staffed with about 25 seats. They all work remotely and they're actually doing it very efficiently. I joke they're actually more efficient working from home than when they're here. Because call volume obviously increased greatly with our branches being closed. We saw a huge increase in call volume, longer average call times, but they were able to handle it very efficiently. And, you know, members were generally very patient. We put a front end message on when you called in, it just said, you know, due to circumstances, you might experience longer wait times. You can leave your phone number if you want. Our system enables somebody to not lose their place in the queue. But generally, we're answering over 94% of the calls, and with an average call time of about 3.5 to 4.5 minutes. So that's working really well. The remote access, we're really telling people we do not want them in the headquarter building right now unless they are required to be here to process mail and things like that. There's certain things that still have to be done here. And again, so minimal on-site staffing. We are now requiring them to wear masks as part of the governor's order. And I'll move on to the next slide from there. The Pennsylvania Department of Health order, Alex just went over most of this, I think. So you can see our executive leadership team, that's with all of us with our masks on over at the right. We were trying to model for our employees good behavior. We're all wearing our masks. We have cleaning and exposure protocols in place. We've had a situation where 3 of our branches had possible cases of COVID-19. We closed the branches. Our facilities folks, we were able to get the branches what we call deep clean by an outside service. They come in and do a complete cleaning, disinfectant. And at this point, we're moving to, if we do have a confirmed case where we'll have to do temperature screenings, we have the thermometers now to do that. But right now, we do not have to require that, but we can if needed. Currently, we require face coverings for all of our staff members, whether they're in the branches or in the back office here. Requirements for serving the public. Our branches, we have to limit occupancy to 50% of the certificate of occupancy allowance. Personally, I'd like to keep it lower than that because we have our employees in there. And for proper social distancing, we put markers wherever there could have been a line so people stay 6 feet apart. We've put shields now at our pods for our platform people so they can be behind some other protection besides their mask. It provides a barrier and a buffer for germ spreading. And our branch folks do hourly cleaning of high touch areas with disinfectant wipes and things like that. Our ATM machines get wiped down. Any areas inside the branch, doorknobs and things like that get wiped down. You can move on to the next slide. Our member service and delivery, we have looked at some, what can we do for product and service enhancements? I mentioned one about promoting remote deposit capture, which we already had. We're looking at mobile wallet. That's a contactless way to pay with Apple Pay and through your Droid. So we're working now. We have our debit card where it will be able to be, people can put that in their mobile wallet and do transactions as long as the merchants are able to do it, where they don't have to touch, the plastic or a keypad or anything like that. We're also looking at rolling out email receipts. So if someone's in a drive-up lane or in a branch and they do a transaction, we can email the receipt to them. Again, contactless. It's not being touched by our employee. We're not handing it back out to the member. So trying to limit as much as possible any actual, human contact or transfer of germs. Some of the delivery system changes we've made. We found after the first couple of weeks, expanding the hours at our drive-through locations made sense. And it also helped with our staffing. We were able to rotate. We created teams. So if we have a team staffing a drive-up location or a branch, by not having all of our people in the branches, they can work, say, 1 or 2 days and then take a day or two off. We are paying them. And that way it kind of helps reduce their stress levels, but also if there is a case where someone in that team is confirmed to have COVID, we can isolate it to that team. They're not infecting other folks or by working with multiple different employees every day. We have our member service center, which is our call center. We were able to staff that with other folks in the organization who don't typically work there, but don't have other things to do based on their job responsibilities. So they are able to take on calls, overflow calls. And we also set up temporary transaction boxes at some of our branches and we call them night drops. Not all of our branches had them, but we put boxes there. If someone just wanted to make a deposit of a check or a transfer, they could write it up and put it in the box. And then our branch people, they empty that box out every hour and process the transaction of the request from the member. We've also have helped our members with the Paycheck Protection Program. And you've probably heard about that. We've got, at this point, we have about over $8 million for our small business owners who were able to get access to the program. We created the portal. They were able to apply and get approved. So we're excited about that. This is obviously a very difficult time for small businesses and even some larger businesses. So, and just kind of, this isn't on the slide, but currently, I guess a little bit of hope. Our mortgage business has continued to be very, very busy, highest volumes ever with rates being low. We're still seeing a lot of refinancing transactions going on, and we are able to get those done pretty much remotely and contactless. And one bright spot, we're continuing to say we pre-approve members for purchases. My personal feeling is once realtors can get back to work, and I heard Alex say that sounds like that is happening. I feel like the purchase market will pick up where it left off after maybe a little bit of time where they figure out how to show houses without exposing everybody. But I think that's a little bit of a bright spot. I think that we'll see that continue. There obviously was a lack of inventory, of homes, but the fact that people are members are asking to get pre-approved is positive. Anecdotally, we have seen an increase already in applications for consumer loans such as auto, home equity, and personal loans. I think with the dealers now being able to deliver vehicles contactless, we're promoting our contactless borrowing capability, so we can fulfill member loan requests without them having to come into a branch. So again, trying to look for the positives here, I do see a little bit of a bright spot in the consumer borrowing activity where they need loans. So we can go on to the next slide. Other side planning, this is a term, I guess, I don't know if we coined it, but it's what we're calling it. What does it look like as we start to bring people back? And I think I've heard the comparison and I've used it. It was kind of like a light switch. You flicked off the way this started. I feel like it's going to be more like a very slow dimmer switch as we kind of ramp things back up. It will not be flicking a switch up to get us back in business. So we're looking at it for our branches, a phased approach to reopening lobbies over the next weeks or months, hopefully weeks. We've installed sneeze guards to protect employees and members. We're limiting members, as I said earlier, to the 50% of occupancy and trying to identify what new normal is, but I don't really think anybody's capable of identifying what that is, and that's just going to evolve as the pandemic evolves, hopefully to its termination and a vaccine is developed. So for our headquarters buildings, or for our headquarter location, we see a slow transaction back to on-site staffing, continuing allowing folks to work remotely, rotating staff in and out to limit exposure. Again, if there is a case where we have an employee who says, hey, I'm testing positive, we will not have exposed all of our back office employees. So continuing with social distancing and wearing masks is as much as we're supposed to. Limiting visitors here and any in-person meetings, we kind of went to that early on. We still have mail deliveries, FedEx, package deliveries have to go on as normal, but most travel and in-person meetings have been stopped. We have sneeze guard in our reception area, and as I said, trying to identify what our new normal is as far as our headquarter building is concerned. And can move on. I won't spend a ton of time here, but employee impact. We had put a strategy in place early on to try to keep our employees working, knowing that even though their particular job may not be able to be done, people were very, very open to working in other areas, like our mortgage company, where they are extremely busy. We probably have 10 to 12 credit union folks who are helping out with on the mortgage side of the business. There's all different kinds of things they can do. As far as paying our folks, we're extending our current strategy through May 8th, which is the new, I guess, governor's executive order, where things are continuing as they are. So we have not had to furlough any employees, and nor do we want to. Our boards are very supportive of that. But the fact that we didn't furlough anybody has really given us the flexibility to rotate people, kind of contain any potential exposures, as well as cross-training people where they're helping out in areas like our call center, our mortgage folks, where help is needed. And that's the part where we've deployed resources to support busy departments. And we'll continue to monitor and really improve our remote work. I don't see the remote work going away. We were using hoteling offices and hoteling spaces prior to this. I see us having more of that, where some, maybe 2 or 3 managers share an office because they're each only in 1 day a week. That could be part of the new normal. I don't know. But those are the things we're watching. I spoke kind of quickly. I apologize, but thank you. And please, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, Mike, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of those details with us. And as many of the folks that are on the call aren't able to be open, have that forward facing to the public yet, I'm sure this is all going to be super helpful for them. We do have 2 questions so far. The first one is, how do you do the staff rotation? If you can talk a little bit about that. I think you did touch on the fact that they're in teams, but is there anything else you can talk about?
Yeah, so basically by reducing the number of locations we had open, if we have 200 people who staff all of our branches, by having only 14 of them open and operating, we were able to take the teams from, say, because we have the 4 drive-ups and 10 branches, that's 14. So we have maybe 8 branches where it didn't have to be staffed. So what we did was the district managers looked within their districts and basically, I apologize, where we created teams. So they work together. That's really how we did it, because we had extra body. We were able to do that, if that makes sense. And then we rotate them. That team will work, say, on our Brookhaven branch, which is a drive-up branch. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the same team will be in there staffing the drive-up window. Wednesday, Thursday, it'll be a different team, and Friday and Saturday will be a different team. So that's kind of how we're doing that. I hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. One more question here, I guess, refiguring the office space for social distancing. I know you said you were doing that a little bit at headquarters. Are you planning for that now?
So at headquarters, what we've done, even in our cafe area and things like that, we actually removed chairs from where, if we had 12 high tops with chairs, we make sure the tables are at least 6 or more feet apart. There's only 1 chair at a high top now, or if there's like our lunch bar where we maybe had 12 chairs, now there's only 3 there. We actually removed the chairs. Where we had more casual seating, we distanced those and removed excess seating. So people, it's that the visual of, well, I can sit here, and obviously someone's not going to sit next to you in a seat that's built for 2. In our branches, we were basically putting the equivalent of duct tape down on the floor to say, I think the post offices, I was in one, they were doing that. They had, 6 to 10 feet apart where people were staying behind others. In an office, you could remove a chair, so you only have 1 person, unless we're trying to limit, where hopefully if you have 2 people coming, if only 1 has to come in and do the transaction, we're asking the other person to wait outside, trying to keep children, just limit the number of people, just kind of being practical and logical. to protect our employees and the visitors. So I think some of the physical cues, I would call them, of, moving furniture around in an office, perhaps just having one guest chair versus two, so people get the hint, like, we only want one other person in here with our employee, things of that nature. And now we might be actually having where people will be waiting outside the branch in hopefully a socially distanced line before we let them in, especially now that it's by appointment only, so we're able to space those visits out appropriately. But I could see us, we do have cases where people are waiting outside.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I'll remind the folks on the call that if you have any questions for Mike or Alex, to type them in and we will make sure we get them answered. Alex, I have a question for you, and I'll give you a second. But as people are starting to think about reopening and get back to work, are there any, I know that there's social distancing and, who is, a life-sustaining business. If somebody wants to go into their office and start work, and they don't have any clients in their office and they, just need to perform their jobs, what are your feelings on if they can, and I know this is just feelings, this isn't law, this isn't fact, but like if somebody needs to go in and get something done and they're not a quote unquote life-sustaining business, do you think that they're able to do that?
Yes, it sounds like that falls under the telework. And as long as you're by yourself, folks have been okay working from their offices. Where it's gotten concerning is with employees coming in and any interaction there. However, with that said, there hasn't really been a whole lot of enforcement on those items in office settings, as far as I understand. And it sounds like that will also lessen up a little bit. And I glossed over it, but the regions that the governor mentioned, it does sound like Southeast might be last. Where that's a little concerning is, are we the main point of focus, and will there be more enforcement moving forward? It's just not clear yet. From the governor.
So, I mean, I think we're all feeling the same way, that the Southeast will probably be last because we were one of the first, and we do have a large population. So any thoughts on when we might see more movement here, or is that just, it's too soon to tell and we, probably are missing stuff with the health information coming out now?
They just did their press conference now, and all the details. It does sound like on Friday, they're going to release, the governor's office and release more information on regions, phases, et cetera, for different areas. So hopefully some more guidance on Friday on what opening up looks like, not for the Southeast, other parts of the state that'll hopefully head our way.
Right, and then hopefully with them opening up first, there's lessons learned and takeaways for us down here that we can open safely and efficiently, and making sure we get our economy back up and running. With that, we'll move into the next portion of our call, and we have a business impact survey that Jacqueline has put together, and we have sent out to our membership just to get the feedback from our members about what's happening with their business, what's happening with the future, and how they're planning. So we will send that impact survey out to everyone, and it's in the webinar chat on the right-hand side there, if the chat's up for you. So we encourage everybody to fill out that survey. We will take that information and we will share it with our elected officials as they are working to, hopefully safely open up our economy again. We want to make sure we're hearing what the business community is seeing, and we want to make sure we voice their concerns to our elected officials. So if anybody, we encourage everybody to take that survey, but if anybody has any thoughts or any questions about, what they're able to do at this point, or, what they think the future looks like for them, if they want to share that with us, please feel free to do so. We're open to hearing your thoughts about that, and we'll give you a couple seconds or so to take a look at that survey and fill in any questions or thoughts, or if you want to raise your hand and talk for a minute, we'll allow you to do so as well. But as we're looking, waiting to see if there's any questions here, just wanted to talk about an upcoming event that we have at the Chamber. Our Small Business Awards was scheduled for that first week right after the shutdown occurred. So we're moving forward with it. We're not postponing it anymore. We are going to have our Small Business Awards happen on Thursday, May 14th, virtually. We will tape it we will record it in advance, socially distanced, of course, and then we will air it live on Thursday, May 14th. And we'll have a package deal with Drexelbrook for dinner, as well as Jess, I won't spoil the keynote speaker and the promotion we will have with a local brewer, but we're excited. So please come and check out the Small Business Awards virtually. This will probably be the first in a couple of big events for us that we do virtually. So come and check it out, see how we do this, and maybe it'll be more impactful than other things that we've done in the past. We have another question here. What can a business do if you're trying to bring back workers who have been on unemployment, but they don't want to return because they make more staying home? The business needs to send the PPP money and the Family Leave Act requirement that the employee, due to COVID-19, is guaranteed the same job upon returning to work. I know this is something that we're hearing a lot about, and the governor made some maybe off-the-cuff remarks last week. Alex, can you talk a little bit about that if you're able to? And I know that the governor's office was trying to clarify that a little bit after those comments, but with folks making more on unemployment than they would at work, and do they have to come back to work?
I prefer not answering that question.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I am kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
In fact, they don't have it. It's become controversial. And a lot of things that I purposely sort of gave the high level update on it have become controversial and are playing out in the legislature, as well as press releases and social media. So I don't really have a good answer for that question, though. And what's going to happen to force folks back to work in case they're making more? I suspect it's they put their job at jeopardy. Eventually the benefits run out. But the governor's comments last week did raise a couple concerns and questions that I don't think have been fully clarified.
Okay, well, thank you. So we will look to answer that. And I want to go back to Mike Magnavita. Mike, I know you have another thought to share.
Yeah, thanks, Trish. Yeah, I was just thinking, knowing we have a lot of probably smaller business owners, and just for individuals as well, I would encourage anybody who is in any kind of financial distress to reach out to their financial institution, their bank or their credit union, either a personal or a business level. We've done a lot. We actually reached out to our business borrowers and have really helped a lot of them in helping them in delaying loan payments, or just paying the principal amount with the various types of forbearance agreements. It was nothing negative. It keeps them current from a credit reporting perspective. And the same on the personal side. If you're having any kind of difficulties, trust me, your financial institution wants to hear from you. We do not want your car. We do not want your house. We want to work with you. And especially if it's a short-term reduction in household income based on what's going on right now, I would, again, I can't stress enough, don't wait for things to get sideways on you. Be proactive about it and get out in front of it. And I think you'll find, hopefully, other financial institutions, and I believe they are more than willing to work with you. Even though you might have been current up through the end of March, but April, you got furloughed. Don't wait till it gets where you've missed 2 payments and they're calling you. Be proactive about it. That was all.
No, Mike, that's great. That's great information, because we do have so many small business owners on the call, and we work with them on a daily basis, and some of them are feeling the pressures of those bills starting to come in. So I think it's nice and kind of a relief to hear that come from you, that they can and they should be reaching out and being proactive, because that's very helpful. So
Trish,
go ahead, Alex.
I just want to clarify one point. So the legislation passed to open up the real estate industry. the House has not been taken up by the Senate. And you have some online notary, remote notarization actions by both the governor and working its way through the legislature. And then the governor yesterday did release some guidelines to for real estate. However, I don't want to misspeak that I don't think the Real Estate Association is particularly happy, even with the actions as of yesterday. And there's a court case working its way to the U.S., not just the PA, but the U.S. Supreme Court that has some of their concerns outlined, as well as other businesses. So I just want to clarify, if any realtors on the phone, it does sound like there's still some concerns. However, there's been some actions with law offices and, again, that remote online notary to allow some transactions.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I want to take the time to thank everybody for being on the call today. Hopefully we answered some questions and provided some insight into what's happening and what is going to happen here in Delaware County. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear them, and we'd love to help provide you the resources that you need to keep your business going. So Alex, Rahn, and Mike and Magnavita, we are honored and thrilled that you were able to be with us today and you could share your wisdom with our members. Jacqueline and Jess, thank you as always for pulling this together, and hopefully check out our delcochamber.org for our upcoming webinars and our small business awards. Hopefully we will see you on May 14th for that. So have a great Wednesday, and we will hopefully see you face to face soon. Take care.